Hello, my name is McKenna Kewen, and today I'm going to talk about some topics I have really enjoyed learning about in chapters 1 through 5. So, these are some of my favorite topics from the course: computer forensics, internet privacy, censorship, and then a few important laws that protect or threaten our digital rights. So, each topic made me think a lot about the balance between security, privacy, freedom, especially in today's world. So first up is computer forensics, and this is essentially all about collecting and analyzing digital evidence in a way that's legal so it can be utilized in court. So there are different areas like disk forensics, network forensics, malware analysis, and even investigating databases. So as mentioned here on the slide, there are certifications like CCE or CISSP that can help you specialize if you want to head down this route for a career. But what I found really cool is how even deleted files aren't always gone, so forensic experts can still recover them even if they appear to be deleted. But computer forensics definitely closes the gap between internet and law, as it is essential for investigating both cybercrimes and traditional crimes that involve digital devices. Alrighty, on to chapter 4. So I enjoyed learning about the Right to Financial Privacy Act, which was passed in 1978. This law protects your banking records from being accessed by the government without your knowledge. I was never aware of this, but before this law came into play, the government could literally just request your bank information and you would never be notified or ever probably know in your life. Um, Now, continuing on to this slide with the Right to Financial Privacy Act, this law came about because of a Supreme Court case called the United States versus Miller, where they ruled that since your records are stored by the bank, they technically belong to the bank, not you. So this decision overall was insane because it basically said you had no legal control over your own financial information. But then again, many laws are created due to issues that we're overseeing, so it is good that this case brought the insanity of banks owning financial information to light, but it's still surprising that this needed to happen prior to the law being created. Now, I believe that proper notice needs to be provided by the government prior to accessing an individual's funds. So the next slide, we have the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which is also from the year of 1978. This is all about how the government can spy on people when it comes to foreign intelligence. So if a US citizen is involved, they still need to get judicial approval, but only within 72 hours after surveillance starts, which is super interesting. But between 2001 and 2015, there were actually over 25,000 requests for surveillance under the FISA, and only 12 were denied. So that just tells you how much power this law gives the government. This also may be my favorite topic overall because it reminded me of the Edward Snowden whole debacle. Essentially, Snowden was a former employee of the US National Security Agency who leaked a bunch of private information back in 2013 that showed just how far the NSA was going with surveillance, even on regular Americans. This sparked a bunch of debate and outrage and is actually still currently being looked into. I believe that Snowden actually has since moved to Russia and the US is trying to get him back in the States, but that's all for right now. So as for the part 2 of this, I actually looked up the most recent FISA report, and in 2024, there were 308 applications for surveillance, and 292 of them were approved. So again, most of them got that green light, and it's interesting that there's not much pushback once those requests are made. I do think that it is important to keep an eye on this kind of thing, especially when it involves privacy. Now on to chapter 5 with internet filtering. This is basically software that blocks websites or content that's considered inappropriate. So it's mainly used a lot by parents, schools, and businesses. So it works by filtering out URLs, keywords, or even images. And while I do get why it exists, the downside is it can go too far. So sometimes filters block stuff that is actually helpful or educational, so it can limit what people can access even when they're trying to learn or do research on a topic. I also read that this targets the poor, as many are only able to access public computers where important health information may be blocked. And I would also be curious to look more into that specific topic. As for the next slide, it is one of my other favorite topics, which is internet censorship. This takes things a huge step further from internet filtering, as it's when access to information is actively controlled by a government. So China is a big example since they have a huge internet user base, but also a really, really strict censorship, especially around topics like religion, politics, and anything related to foreign media. Some countries even use the three-strike law, where after 3 violations, you lose internet access entirely. I think that I saw France was one of the big countries that does that. That being said, I did want to just look into censorship within the US because the First Amendment has been targeted a lot as of recent events. I, along with many others, are seeing more and more of a debate about online speech, especially when it comes to politics. So, for example, Meta, the parent company of Instagram, has faced a lot of backlash over removing or hiding posts about the genocide that's currently happening in Palestine. So, people also use the term shadow banning when their content is taken down or buried within the algorithm, usually without being told why. And that kind of has been happening with a bunch of reporters or journalists that are covering Palestine. They're being removed, blocked, shadow banned, and that is sparking a bunch of outrage as well. So, Freedom House even said that the US Internet Freedom Score has dropped 5 years in a row. They pointed out how misinformation, manipulation, and even political pressure on platforms have all gotten worse. And I found this part especially interesting because it feels like we're watching freedom of speech slowly get chipped away, not by the government directly, but through private companies under pressure from the government. So. Alrighty. To sum it all up and my final thoughts, computer forensics plays a huge role in investigations and cybersecurity. Internet filters and censorship can help protect people, but they also risk limiting information and access to important information. And then finally, laws like the Right to Financial Privacy Act and Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act are meant to protect us, but they just show how tricky it is to balance security and personal privacy. That being said, overall, it is crucial to have a balance between security, privacy, and freedom on the internet. So that is all. Here are my sources. And thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.